Hello, 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 everybody. It's Michael Valdes with the Real Estate Mastery Podcast. I literally am fresh off the plane. I just got off the plane from San Francisco back to New York in the middle of a thunderstorm in New York, but we're here. We just had an incredible top team lead mastermind in San Francisco. And today's conversation is going to be with another incredible thought leader in our industry. And I'm so excited about this conversation. Kendall Bonner, welcome, welcome, welcome to the show. You are such an incredible team lead, attorney. You are a speaker in our industry, an incredible thought leader. You have been on so many stages that I've seen you on everywhere. I am so happy to have you here. How are you?
I am amazing. I'm so blessed. I'm honored. I'm thankful. I'm just all the words. And I just thank you for the opportunity to be here. And, it's funny you should mention some of the accolades there. I just posted today how I can't even believe all the opportunities and blessings I've experienced in my life through the vehicle of real estate. I mean, when I got my license, it was not, there's no way I could have ever expected, anticipated, or even known all the things that were going to happen in my career. But I'm so grateful. I feel so blessed.
Well, I love that because what a career it's been. You have had such an incredible trajectory, which I'd love to break down really briefly for the audience. But
Yeah.
what I love more than anything is the friendship that we have created in the last couple of years. And, seeing you and your husband and your lovely children and seeing you guys at events and knowing where your heart and soul is as a mother, as a leader, as someone who just wants to share and contribute. So I'm the one that's honored and blessed to have you on the show. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So let's jump in there. Let's talk about how you started, how all the accolades got to be. But how did you get started in our industry?
Yeah, so I will do my best to make this a brief part of my story here today in the conversation because I think it's something that's commonly asked of me, right? How'd you go from being an attorney to getting into real estate and being an agent? I got my real estate license in 2011, and I've currently been a Florida licensed attorney for, I would say, almost 21 years this year.
Wow.
This year
Wow.
makes 21 years. I know, it's crazy. I got my license, Florida license in 2003 for the Florida bar, and then real estate 2011. And honestly, I was just bored with my career at that time. And I knew there was something else for me. And I
Mm.
realized that being a lawyer wasn't my destiny. I think it was something my mom wanted for me. She told me back when I was in high school, JD, MD, PhD, pick one. And my mom was an MD. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. And I felt I was too immature to go to graduate school right after college because I knew I was a procrastinator. So I
Yeah.
was like, I need structure. And so I ended up going to law school and getting my JD, but I actually never intended to practice law, even though I did for many years. I did criminal defense, I did jury trials, I did all
Wow.
of that stuff. Mediations, depositions. I did all of that stuff through my career. And I enjoyed it in the sense that I learned a lot through that career, and I will
Sure.
never regret my legal degree because I think it's that degree that, 1, it led to my husband, but 2, it's everything that all the skill sets that I have today, I can definitely trace back to things I learned back in law school. So, I'm
You know,
grateful for it.
I could actually see that being a great training ground for real estate. Everything that you just said, negotiation, the idea of how you deal with people, the idea of how do you present something, how do you sell something, right? Whether you're
Oh,
selling
yeah.
a case, presenting your client, presenting to a jury, your
Yep.
all these skill sets are
Oh, yeah.
so synergistic with our industry.
Oh, yeah, even the last, thing I was doing, which was right before I got into real estate, we had our own law firm, and we were doing bankruptcy practice, right? So we were helping
Right.
people file Chapter 7, Chapter 13 bankruptcies in federal court here in Florida. And I have to say that that whole exercise of meeting a stranger, bringing them into your office, getting 1 hour to win them over, to get them to know you, like you, trust you,
Yeah.
and at the end of that conversation, agree to sign a document and hand you a check. That was the perfect training ground for being a listing agent, which is why
100%.
when I got into real estate, immediately became a listing agent. And it was my first transaction, my first meetings, my first closings. I don't think I even knew how to work with buyers for the first 6 to 9 months of being in real estate.
Okay, now hold
I
on a
just was
second.
working with listings.
Wait. Are
Yeah,
you kidding me? 2011, you're newly licensed, right?
yep,
Most newly licensed agents work with buyers because that's the easier thing to do. You
yeah,
actually know you decide to you jump into the deep end of the pool and go
oh,
and
yeah,
say, "Hey, Mr. Seller, I'm newly licensed. Give me your home. I'm going to go represent it." How does
yep.
that happen? How does that
You
happen?
know I know. Well, you know what? I would say one of like I said, walking into those appointments as a
Yeah,
listing agent, I had to or as a bankruptcy attorney, I had a script. I understood
I love that.
exactly what the customer wanted to hear, needed to hear to make a decision. I knew how to build rapport. I just knew what to say. And honestly, it was something I would say over and over and over and over again. In fact, it took me probably about 2 or 3 years of being in real estate before I forgot my bankruptcy script, right? Like today I couldn't say it to you because it's been, well over a decade, but for a couple of years I could still recite the script that I had in my head to how to convert someone in a bankruptcy appointment. So it was that same skill set that I translated into listings and I had a process. Like I understood that people trust process. And so when I went into listing homes, I had developed a process. I developed a strategy for how to do the appointment, how to get someone to, feel comfortable working with me, how to build that trust, how to demonstrate my expertise. I took time to read and learn the documents, like the listing agreements, the disclosures, the contracts. I could tell them the difference between the options that they had in terms of contracts. So it was, and also I could explain the process. That is one talent that I am grateful for that, and I think perhaps with my legal background connected to just being, you know, a a person who loves and appreciates good communication,
Yeah.
how important it is to articulate in, very difficult or tough conversations or ideas very simply, right? And break it down for people so they don't feel like they're not intelligent, right? But that they just feel like I understand. And when you can take complex ideas and conversations and make them simple so that people can understand and they feel educated, that builds so much trust with them. And I think that was one of my like superpowers that I am able to do that.
You know,
So,
what you said was so powerful. People trust process. You came in as a brand new agent and you were able to have the gain the trust of the client to give you their home. And I'm sure you didn't say I just got licensed last week, but it was something that was to you, you had the confidence to go in and knock on that door. You know, when I was in sales, my very first sale was in the luxury space, $6.4 million. And people say to me, "How was that even possible? How was that your first sale?" And to me, because I came from banking, you came from law background, I came from banking. That's what I was used to. I was used to that level and those numbers. And
yeah.
so for me, it was easier. And then for you, you had the system and process. It was easier for you to go in and convince a seller to give you that listing. And by the way, that's your guaranteed payday. And then it was that rather than going to your friends and sphere of influence and say, "Do you want to go buy a house?" So I think that's a fascinating thing of how you started your career. So
Yeah.
tell me now how you went and built your career, because at one point you now have a team. So
Mm.
at what point did that trajectory happen?
Yeah, so, what going back to the beginning, right? So I'm a listing agent, and like I said, I did not know really much anything about buyers. In fact, I even was so systematized at one point that I did not even go to the houses to list them. Like I would do
Oh,
the consultations in my office, and I would send another agent to the house to do some of the work that need to be done in the property. I don't think that that's necessary in today's marketplace, but back then, with the volume I was doing, that was kind of my process. But I was a top single agent or independent agent, and then I started a team, meaning I was instructed by my manager at the time, like, "You need a buyer's agent." So I had a buyer's agent for about a year, year and a half, and then I, ended up getting propositioned to open a franchise, right? And so when I did that, out of respect for my current brokerage, I broke up the team, I left her with that brokerage, and I started my own brokerage on my as an agent of one, just myself,
yeah.
and had some staff, right? So I run this brokerage for about 9 years, almost 10
Wow.
years, and built it from scratch and was really proud of that. But 2020, the pandemic, and at that time, I had started my speaking career. So probably in about 2018, I started doing a lot of video content and trying to establish myself as a broker and a leader that agents could trust, that they could learn from, who would be transparent and basically I had this strategy called learn, test, teach. I like to learn new things, test it, make sure it works, and then teach other agents and brokers how to duplicate.
Yeah.
And so 2020, I'm doing speaking. I'm on the Inman stage. I was my first year on Inman
Wow.
Connect in New York, and then I was on stages with Remax, my brand at that time, and a few other events that I was being introduced to, and that was really for me when everything just started to happen really rapidly. But it was also the time when I just got exhausted and really like nervous and uninspired, right? And I felt
Mm.
I ended up feeling stagnant and like, okay, I did all this. Now what's next for me?
Yeah.
And in 2021, I finally decided to start a team, a real estate team.
Wow.
And after years of my husband begging me, like, can we start a team? Because he just felt like that was a better financial model for a business. And I attached to it because I in the meantime, I had discovered I had this love and this passion for marketing and lead generation, and I really wanted to test it, right? So I call
Yeah.
my team my lab because it they help me test all these crazy ideas that I have, all these things that I want to do. And they help to be my playground for that. And so I'm really grateful for my team. We've had tons of evolution over the last 2, almost 3 years,
Yeah.
and, I'm really proud of what we've accomplished. I'm honored that they choose to work with Bill and I. I'm also grateful because Bill pretty much runs the team for the most part. It's named after me, but really, I would attribute a lot of its success to Bill himself and the team themselves. I'm just lucky to have my name on the sign at
You're
this
being
point.
very modest because of what you do and the influence that you have with everyone and especially with your team. And Bill is so amazing as well. And he brings his own tool set and talent, and you guys complement both of each other so beautifully, where
Yes,
it's such a
thank you.
synergistic unit. And it's so wonderful to see you both in action when that happens. And so I love some of the things you just said, where you were stagnant. And I know that, I was with my other company for 15 years before I met EXP. And it was one of those things where I could phone in my job. And when you get to that point, it's, when if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yes,
And that's a very impactful sort of movement motivator to change. And so, as scary as it is, it's almost scarier to stay.
yes.
Do you know what I mean? And
Yep.
so I love that you made that shift. And I also love what you just coined with your lab, your team of learn, test,
Test, teach.
teach. And
Yes,
I love that because I love it's back to your systems, right? You break down what you work on in your lab into
yep,
three things that are easy for people to digest.
yep,
And that's really great. And actually, this was part of my question was like, how do you build the culture in your team? But probably this is probably like the start of it. Everyone knows where that end is. But tell me how you build that culture.
Yeah, I it's so funny because I for a long time, I was like, "I hate the word culture," right? Because
Yeah.
I feel like it's so overly
Overused.
used, right? And I said, it's really not about culture, it's about building community because
Mm,
the community you identify with says more about you than the culture that you're
sure.
assigned, right? Because a lot of times we're assigned cultures, right? But community is about self-identification, and really to me, community is also about communication.
Yeah.
And I think that constant or consistent, at least contact and communication is really how you build strong foundational communities. Like having a regular meeting pulse, right? That
Yeah.
allows people to hear from you and to be heard. I think being approachable and making yourself easily accessible also helps create community because if people feel like they can touch you, if they can talk to you, if they can access you at any time, it creates safety. It
Mm,
creates those like find those fundamental needs that people have for, certainty and safety and, connection,
yeah.
right? So if
Yeah.
you can create that approachable space, I think that's really helpful. And then of course, like creating a feedback loop, I think is also important for community and culture, like giving feedback and receiving feedback. People
100.
need to feel listened to. And so they need to be able to have a voice, but they also need to hear from you to know, like, hey, you're doing great, or hey, this is where you can improve. Like,
I love this.
people, I think, crave that kind of like that feedback loop that helps build them up at the end of the day, right? It comes from a place of love and
Yeah.
concern and care. And I think that when you can do that and you when you can do that in a consistent way,
Mm,
people are they thrive in those kinds of environments. So,
that's a
and also
beautiful thing.
too, I think it's important, like, I consider myself a leader who builds leaders. So
Yeah.
I have, like I said, in a lot of ways, I've surrendered a lot of leadership on my team as a leader in the goal and in the hopes of building other leaders within my network and within my group. So we have squad leaders. I've established my husband as a leader, and staff and things like that. And so I think that also helps fortify community when you're not afraid to be the only voice in the room or the most powerful voice in the room or, the most important voice in the room. I
Mm.
don't establish myself as that, at all. I don't ever want that. And so I'm grateful that I have an environment that, we nurture it from that perspective.
I love that because leading through humility is the only way that we can also lift others. And
Oh,
that's what we try to do every day where we are and we who we work for, which we'll get to in a second. But let's talk about like what is happening in our industry right now. Jesus. Everyone's a little crazy, right? Everyone,
yeah.
there's a lot of noise out there, and I classify it as noise because we have a lot of talking heads, and then we have some people that aren't saying anything, right? So some brokerages are super silent. Of course, we're talking about the NAR settlement and everything that's coming around that, and the new rules that are happening in July with buyer representation and things of that nature. And so we have done a lot as a company, as EXP, with putting a lot of information out there. We built a buyer toolkit, but you've also been very vocal because you are also a thought leader in our industry, just in your own brand before you even joined EXP. And people turn to you, people look to you. And so tell me what your thoughts have been on this and what sort of tools that you've been creating for your buyers and really just what your overall look at this is. I'd love to get your
Yeah.
feedback. And I know you've been talking about it nonstop.
You know, Michael, we should have a whole hour, just me
I
and
know.
talking about this particular topic. I mean, I could probably talk for ages about it. And what I'll say is this, because I know we don't have a whole nother hour to talk about this specific topic. I think that what the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity for all of us is the biggest challenge is to not get distracted. It's not just with the noise, but with our fears, right? Like people are really taking their fears and, really putting a lot of power behind them and a lot of energy behind them.
Mm,
And I think that that's a mistake. Focus if at least if you're not using it to fuel progress and movement, right? But if you're allowing your fear to cause you to freeze, right? Or to flee the industry, um, that those to me may not be the best uses of your fear, right? I in fact, to me, fear is fuel, right? to I'm a
Yes.
fighter, right? Um,
Yes.
and so that for me is how I am, so that to me is the opportunity, is that you can leverage your your fears about this or your concerns and try to reframe them in terms of opportunity. And, one of the things I'm really grateful for is back from my being a broker, we have always taught our agents to do buyer consultations and to do buyer representation agreements, or buyer brokerage agreements is what we call them here in Florida. So I have a long background, and my husband and I, we have like tremendous background in this. And it's something we've always believed in. And we've been preaching for a decade, right? And so with our team, part of one of my strategies in growing my current real estate team was to find agents who fit one of two categories. Either they didn't have a sphere of influence who was large enough to support a career in real estate, or they were newer licensees and needed to be trained. They needed to be given full like support, access, mentoring, coaching, training, and development to be a successful agent.
Yep.
And so I said, "Well, if I'm gonna teach you, we're gonna teach you how to do it the most professional way we know how, which is we're gonna get you to take a consultative approach and get hired," right? Just
There you
like
go.
the
There
way
you
you get
go.
hired for a listing, you get hired to work with a buyer. And
Bingo.
so we've always taught that. So every agent on my team that's ever gone through our full training, that is what they've been taught. They've been taught like what to say over the phone, how to have a compelling offer, and the first goal is to have a conversation. That the goal of that conversation is to set an appointment, not to go show a home. So it's not that they couldn't do it, but that was just the goal. This is the way we taught it. So I feel like we're at a real advantage as a team, um, in that we already know how to navigate
Yes.
this new environment that we're going to be in. And so we're really going all in terms of tools. I'm really trying to equip my agents with, let's talk about, what is it that we're providing to the consumer and how are you going to best articulate that? So, we are role playing and I'm having them go a little bit deeper on all of those
Mhm.
things. But the reason why is because, I learned a long time ago from a former CEO in my world about the value of building an experience that has a cascading effect. And I
Mm.
think that's the job of a broker and of a leader, is to have a cascading effect of client experience. And so, because we've taught that consultation, because we teach scripts, because we teach compelling offers, because we teach process, right? And we've always taught them to get that buyer brokerage agreement signed. They are having that client experience is going to translate, I think, very well in this new environment.
You know what I love? I love the explanation of that because, again, it comes back to your magic of systems and the power of systems to really win the trust. And that's so important because it resonates over and over in this conversation. I
Yep.
mentioned at the top of this introduction that I had just gotten back from a mastermind that we did on the West Coast. And one of the questions that one of the team leads had said is that his agent comes to him and says, "I just got a new listing." You know what he responds? He says, "Great. Was it a buyer or a seller?"
Mm.
To really have the agent understand that there's two sides of a transaction, right?
Right.
And so both sides need documentation, systems, forms, and everyone. And again, it is fear based, and
Yeah.
everything comes back to what I just say: value. What is
Yeah.
the value that you're bringing to this transaction? And
Yeah.
the more valuable you are, you become invaluable. And if you become invaluable, guess what? You become priceless.
Absolutely.
And then you can name your own price as to
Yep.
what you bring in. So I'd love to get your thoughts on, tell me the power of value for you.
Yeah, and I love that you're focusing on this and you're asking this question, because a lot of people are out there saying, just now you have to articulate your value proposition, your value proposition, your value, but no one's stopping to help, especially a lot of agents who are
Yeah,
not as familiar with this. Like, what does that even look like? What does that
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And so I think that's such an important question. And so I'm so glad you asked that. And so for me, when I think about what is the value proposition in today's marketplace and for my team, I think about it as the client experience.
Mm.
For us, it's not just an experience, it's a five-star real estate
There you
experience,
go.
right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
that is what we call it. That is like part of our mission and core value, right? And beliefs. And so, when you're thinking about the client experience, like I have so many thoughts about this. And if you're listening and you are wanting to, improve your value proposition, listen to some of these questions I'm going to ask you or things I'm going to give you to think about. Write these down and start to put on paper how you hit these marks, and this will help you build and articulate the value proposition that leads to a five-star real estate experience. One of the things is, what's the technology you're using, right? Are you improving the home search experience for your client? Are you getting them off the outside portals and bringing them into your own world where their information is not being resold over and over and over again, right? Do you have an app that allows that custom and upgraded client experience? We, use tools like Real Scout and Homestack to kind of give our client that technology experience that they're looking for, right? But what is your contract knowledge? What are the options, opportunities, and obligations in the real estate contract that they are going to be held accountable to? What does paragraph 12 talk about, right? Like in our contract on our Florida FAR bar as is, paragraph 12 is about inspections. Like you need to know your contracts without having to look at them, right? Your contract knowledge needs to be top notch. Also too, do you have access to more homes than the typical agent? Most agents are on just on the MLS. Do you have access to office exclusives and off markets? Those are ways to give a client more. Are you taking a consultative approach? Are you sitting down before you ever show them any homes to talk about their needs, their wants, asking lots of questions and not just offering advice, right? Because that's the other thing. Agents will believe a consultation is just, let me tell you what you need to know. And it's like, well, sure, there is some communication on what they need to know, but are we getting all the information we need to understand what are their concerns? What are their fears? What are the challenges they're anticipating? What are the things that we can tell them that's going to happen before it actually happens to
Yeah.
help them, navigate that experience better? Even something as simple as showings, how you conduct your showings. How prepared are you? What did you bring for the customer and how was it organized, right? Are you bringing to them the property disclosures, the property tax information? Did you provide a notebook for feedback that they could write down and give to you? Did you tell the customer to follow you or just to meet you there, right?
Mm.
Having them follow you from destination to destination is leadership, right? Just meet me there shows to me, can be considered a little lack of concern or care for how they navigate from one place to another. You're leaving it up to them to get lost, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, did you, bring shoe covers for walking into the property, right? Are you
yeah,
protecting the home of the seller? Those things the fact that you bring it with you shows that you're a pre-planner and again you're a leader for for your buyer, right? It's not just respect for the seller, but it's going to impress the buyer. What's the client's preferred communication style? That's another thing. Like, do they prefer to be texted? Do they prefer to be emailed? Do they prefer social media contact? Who knows?
right.
But the point is are you leading the customer journey? And also the last thing I would ask you to think about as an agent is, what are the boundaries? What are the boundaries for you? And what are the boundaries for them? And those are ways that by thinking about those things and articulating them, that you can really show and bring value to that client experience.
Did you just give somebody systems? I love this. This is you just giving back, and that's why I love you so much.
Thank
You
you.
give back immediately. And it's like, I thought about this. This is what other people should be thinking about. This is because the word is just a word unless you put meaning behind it,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
We'd sort of say, what's your value? Who knows? Where do I
Yeah,
start? Right? And it's that whole thing of here's everything that I can give you as a concrete list, which
yeah,
is just a beginning. And you take it
yeah,
and make it your own. You add, you
absolutely.
subtract, but it's yours. Now you can actually articulate something to someone.
Well, and that's the thing, value unarticulated is value unappreciated, right?
Oh, that
So
is so good.
you
Oh,
know, we have got to get better at not just understanding and claiming we have value, but actually and again, not even just saying what that value is, but it causing the client to experience it, right? I mean, that is the most valuable thing you can do is allow someone to experience what it's like to work with you even before they get to work with you. So
I love
having a
it.
process is so important. I learned that from my coach, John Cheplack.
Yeah, I love
You
John.
know, and, I've learned so much from so many people, and I'm just so grateful because that is what keeps me inspired and innovative every single day is all those nuggets and all the learning and all the advice I've been given
Well,
in
good,
my
because
career.
I'm going to queue up my next question. I was going to ask you what the best piece of advice you ever were given.
You know, I'm gonna give this one to my mother who is, this is an easy one. She passed away, a few years back, and,
Sorry.
my mom was one of the not just smartest women I've ever known in my life or, you know, but she was also wise. And
Mm.
she used to give me all these little wisdoms, I would say. And the one that stands out the most in my career, especially even today, and has actually had probably the biggest impact on my career is you don't have to make the mistake to learn the lesson. You
Ooh,
can learn
ooh,
the
that's a
lesson
good
from
one.
watching others. And that was, yeah, that was for me something that I'm so grateful for because it has saved me so much heartache. And honestly, it's like even when I went to go build my team, what people don't know is before I spent a dime, I literally called all of my friends across the country who I knew were running big teams, successful teams, small teams, just if they were running a team, I wanted to talk to them, and I interviewed each of them, and I said I
Wow,
asked about what they did, what they were doing, and from that, whether I was listening and I was jotting notes and I was learning not just what they did well, but I was also taking lessons from the mistakes that they made,
yes,
and that was so powerful and beneficial to me, and that's one of the reasons why I give back because 'cause I'm like, "Listen, you can learn from me. Don't just learn what I did well, learn from my mistakes as also because that's just as powerful as a lesson and, opportunity and money saver and all of that as all the things, are perceived that I did right, you know?"
that's a good one. I like that one. Mom was wise.
Yeah.
So tell me how you got to EXP.
Yeah, how did I get to EXP? So
How
good.
did you
Such a
get here?
how did I get here? It's funny because, years ago, I would have said I was never coming to EXP, right? Probably like many people who, might be saying that today, right now,
Yeah.
but, what they say, eventually we all will come. But I didn't know this at the time when I said yes to EXP, but I really do feel like it's the brokerage that offers more opportunity, more communication, more communication, more collaboration, more community even, and more, transparency and
Mm,
more revenue streams than any other brokerage out there in a accumulation, right? I mean,
yeah.
because for example, there might be some great companies out oh, I know there's great companies out there who, like, they might be good at one of those things or two of those things, but none are as good at all of the things I think as EXP is. And so for that, I'm really grateful has been my experience. But originally when I came, it was about relationships.
Yeah.
Some of the most important people in my world were, coming to this company or at this company. And I just wanted to be back in relationship with them and be able to work with them side by side and really build something great. And it also tied back to the relationships of all the agents I've been working with. I
Mm,
wanted to do something with them that they could actually, duplicate everything that I was doing, right? Because we're in an environment that allows that. If I can have multiple revenue streams, so could they,
yeah,
right? And I wanted that for the people that I work with and honestly, I work for. As a leader, you're a servant
that's right.
and you're working for the people that choose to align with you as much as you're leading them. So I want to be able to nurture all those relationships in an environment that um, was good for all of us and not just me.
I love that because that's been my experience too over these almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years in May. So, for me, it's been such an incredible growth and an incredible home for me in
Yeah.
my extension of my real estate career. So, I have one final question for you, and I love asking this question of all my guests. So, in your book of life,
Yeah.
what is this chapter called and why?
It's been a journey. I've been at EXP now. This month actually is my 1 year
Oh, I
anniversary.
love that.
And, which is really great, and I'll probably be doing a post here shortly about that, like, all the things that have
Yeah.
occurred in the last year. And so I would say in the previous year, the answer would be one thing. But this year right now that I'm in and I'm headed into that is currently unfolding for me, I would call it my most authentic self-discovery.
Ooh.
And I feel like I'm learning self-love, self-appreciation, self-acceptance in a way that I never have before. I tend to be very outwardly focused, not inwardly focused.
Mhm.
And lately I've told myself like it's okay to be kind to yourself and to be gentle to yourself and to forgive yourself for your imperfections because I have this tendency to want to be perfect all the time. And so that causes a lot of internal distress because Lord knows none of us are perfect.
That's right.
And I certainly know I am not. And so just being able to self love, appreciate, and accept has been really important to me. Also, recognizing my fear is fuel to
Mm,
take action has been a part of that self discovery. And I'm also learning like significant and unconditional faith and trust in my relationship with God and the journey that I feel He has me on, because this is not the journey that I thought I would be on, but it's the journey I feel called to. And I'm really grateful for that.
oh, Kendall, and I'm grateful for you. And this has been such an incredible conversation. You've given so much, as you always do. And I'm really appreciative of knowing you, of calling you a friend, of having you as an incredible leader, someone that I have in my life. Thank you for everything that you do for others. And thank you for the opportunity to have this chat.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Have I so value you and appreciate you and the leadership at EXP and the community that you guys work so hard to, continue to groom and grow. And I love watching and experiencing that. And I can't thank you enough for the friendship and the relationship and the trust. And I'm honored and I love y'all. So
Oh,
thank you.
thank
Thank you.
you, Kendall. And thank you all of you for tuning in and listening. And we'll catch you next week on another episode.